What is up, guys? Welcome to a new podcast.
Meow, meow,
How's it going, guys?
Doing great.
Doing so good. Everyone's got the summer cuts right now. Looking good.
You're fresh, long hair. Long hair don't care.
Oh no, I have the summer. Yeah, thanks to
Have the dreads by the draft. That's the goal.
thanks to James's cousin Katie for giving me a fresh cut as always. Actually,
Well, we're here, another season of Splatty with just getting this starting warming us up again about talking about fantasy football. Maybe we can throw in some real football opinions if anyone has any right off the bat. How we feeling about the Niners? Anything like that? Anything that happened that
About the Niners, I'm feeling good about the Niners. I think we've got a stacked roster. I think the quarterback competition is blown out of proportion just as something to talk about in the offseason. I would love Trey Lance to come in and compete, but Brock Purdy's looked good and he knows how to run the offense. And so we're fine.
yeah, it's Brock Purdy's job. He's the best quarterback on the roster, and if Trey Lance outplays him, great. They're
Awesome.
both down, whatever. This is not. But yeah, I mean, I've said this before. I think maybe on the pod. If not, Brock Purdy was a 4-year starter in the Big 12 at Iowa State, where he did not have the athletic advantage over his competitors, right? Much more similar to being an NFL quarterback than what Trey Lance did at North Dakota State. At North Dakota State, Trey Lance got to be the fastest guy in the field. He ran people over he was a fullback. It does not translate to the NFL. Brock Purdy has 4 years as a starter in college, plus 8 games that he's the more experienced guy. He's the guy. So I'm really excited to see how he looks in camp post injury.
I feel like with Trey Lance, we always wanted to see it, and we relied on a couple preseason games, and it just was never enough. I feel like we've seen so many times that mobile quarterbacks who get injured are just stuck in this cycle, and that's I hope that he does not get stuck in that. I don't know. He's got that big Brock energy, dude. I want him on our team. I want someone who's a killer. And he came in, knew he had to work for that job, and he played pretty well. And we just got screwed by injuries more, so it's fine.
And I want to see Lance get snaps. I think he should get 8 to 10 snaps a game. Put him in.
Yeah.
He's a football player. Why does put them both on the field at the same time? Get crazy. The only way you're going to see what he has is if you put him out there in a situation to where he can succeed. So
I think a Taysom Hill role, kind of, not necessarily full on tight end and stuff, but let's get him snaps. Let's utilize the fact that we have 2 quarterbacks, hopefully in his limited amount of snaps, 3 quarterbacks. I guess you're going to surprise me who the third is.
Sam Darnold.
Oh, okay, this is how far we are from news because I totally forgot about that.
And Darnold, man. Yeah.
But I think we could be good. I think we can, let's let him play. Let's get him value. And if we don't need Trey Lance, we've built value. People have seen him play. Trade him, get some more value back. But
yeah, if Brock's balling out at the trade deadline and we need a push, I don't even know. This team's so deep though. I'm maybe a corner, maybe a tackle. I don't know. But I'm not worried. This is the deepest Niners team I can think of in a long time.
I feel like we're going to be really annoying probably at the start of the season. And it's either going to go terribly because we just rode this just wave of just luck last year, or we're going to just be annoyingly in your face. Niners are the best. So let's just hope we're happy and not miserable. So let's talk about fake football, fantasy football. Chris, Kamish, what you got for us? We're not really going into players today. We're just talking some logistics.
So hope everybody's looking forward to Austin and the draft. I'm really pumped on it. Looking forward to some barbecue, maybe getting out to the lodge poker room. Play little cards, getting some time in the pool or the river. I don't know. It's
Well, the house has
August
a
in
pool
Texas.
and we have a putting green. So, there's going to be
Putting contest.
There's going to be so many little competitions.
Lots of good fun. Lots of competition to be had by all. But I want to talk a little bit about looking forward all the way to 2024, because we're not changing rules we are changing a couple rules this year. Maybe we should start with that one. But there is a bigger implication that I want to throw out there for 2024. And I've talked about it with Nabil, talked about it with Kevin, and I think Hunter as well, just kind of like floating the idea. So, remember that for a second. One thing I want to do coming into this year is reduce. So we have 3 keepers, but reduce the total number of players that any manager can have on their roster to 5 coming into the draft. So you get 3 keepers. You can, we'll have the trade window open in August. You can trade for whatever. You still get to keep 3. You don't get, you can't trade extra slots, yada yada. If you have less than 3, then you're allowed to fill your roster, or you fill your Rule 9 picks up to 5 total players. If you have 3, up to 5 total players. So if you only pick 2, you can get 3 picks. But essentially, Rule 9 will work the same, but only your top 2. If you have 3 keepers, like only your top 2 winning bids will actually translate into players that are on your team. So if you bid for somebody at pick 3.10, but you already got 2 players and your first and second round pick, like that, you don't get a third winner, assuming you already have 3 other keepers, and the next highest bid for that player would win the Rule 9 draft. So basically, trying to pump up the draft a little bit again, reduce the number of players that are eligible to be kept on multi-year contracts year over year over year, and make the draft a little bit more fun, or at least avoid the situation as much as possible where people come into the draft with a full roster or close to full roster and are just filling in bench slots. So that's the idea. I've had no negative feedback on this idea. So if there is, I'd love to hear it. But what do you guys think?
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Just kidding. I really like it. I think it's not fun when someone is only making 5 picks in the draft. And I also think like the last few years, like rounds 1 through, like the first 2 rounds have players that like in a typical redraft league is like rounds 1 through 5 or 6. Like we've scraping off so much talent with like how many players are kept that it makes like the players eligible to be drafted more fun. And it makes, I think, like Rule 9 like another fun wrinkle. Like that's such a fun part of our league that now trying to guess like, okay, we each only get 3. So like this person is a hot commodity. I'll put a bid in, but like probably not getting them. Like I'm going to focus. It just adds like this extra wrinkle to like, how are you going to try to use your bids to get only the 2 to 3 guys you're targeting? So I like it. I think it's fun.
Yeah, I would agree. It opens up the pool for the draft. I think it does. In years past, we've had people snag some really deep keepers, and I know that's a topic for later as well. But like in general, Rule 9 also then depleted more talent. So our first couple rounds, like any chance of recreating a Kamara or Justin Jefferson or players who have been in the league at great value has pretty much like diminished by the number of people taking a Rule 9. I do like the wrinkle of the strategy that is kind of brought into that, as like James was talking about. I think now that we're introducing a third keeper, I actually think it's nice that you don't need to keep 3 because you can use that as a strategy to potentially get more out of the Rule 9. I look at the players that are eligible to be kept, and I think there is a lot of great talent out there that is going to likely need to go into the Rule 9, which will make it more strategic of like, I have this iffy third player that like, if they're not on my roster, am I going to cry about it? No, but now I can get that flexibility of trying to get someone else. There's obviously a risk, but I do think it adds to the layering of the preseason that we've tried to establish.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm glad to hear you guys are positive about that. But yeah, it's the point is let's make the draft, like make the draft fun again, you know? Like and not that it's not fun, but like it sucks when your third round pick like is not actually like, you know, like you missed out on rule 9 and then it's like, well, I'm getting like a 6th round value redraft, like, you know.
Yeah.
I think it recalibrates the draft picks a little bit by just limiting the number of people that can go. And then turns us in like back into like a true keeper league where, okay, max you're bringing 5 guys from last year's roster, or other people's rosters, and not like we're not a dynasty league. Like we're not, like the draft is a huge focus of what our league is. So let's not devalue drafting players.
Yeah. I think this also gives us more flexibility in the future as well. Like I know that we consistently talk about, do we add more keepers? Well, that's fine. Like I think 5 is a lot right now, but could be as high as we go. And just having that flexibility of like, hey, no matter what, you don't come into the draft with ever having more than 5 players, whether that's 4 keepers, 1 rule 9, 5 keepers, you know, 1 keeper, 4 rule 9s. Like, I think it's cool to see how this might be the first time that I feel like we're looking at keepers potentially even past the next couple of years, right? Like we're talking about how does the league create something that isn't impacting our gameplay. We have focus on the draft that we like. I think this is the closest that I feel like 5's a good number, whether it's rule 9 or keepers.
Yeah, and I've thought about like I've had other ideas, and that these are not things I want to implement now. Where it's like, do we limit like your keepers position wise? So like, you know, we add like a 4th keeper, but it's quarterback only, or quarterback tight end only, or something like that. Like, you know, like you know, and I don't necessarily want to have
Justin
to get
Tucker only. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want to have to get that restrictive. I've also had this idea that is not even half baked, where we do like almost like 2 rounds of rule 9, where basically like inspired by the idea of like a restricted free agent, where if somebody bids on your player, that you could match a better pick to keep that player on your roster. And that would I think that would be fun. But there are a lot of other things I think would rather get in done first. And I don't know how how do you mark like which players are restricted? Like, you know, is that just too convoluted? Like, is that like, you know,
Chris,
like
I thought you're trying to make things easier for yourself. Why do you keep adding more layers that are like, oh, I'm going to make it easier here, but I'm going to add these 8 other steps?
And so that's why the restricted free agent thing ultimately is not something I'm proposing, because the more I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, like just a bunch of extra busy work for me in July and August for a thing that's supposed to be fun. All that being said, so now James, you're going to hear for the first time the other rule idea that I, in regards to keepers, I want to implement this. So this would not happen until the 2024 draft. Players that are currently keepers, we would have to like convert them into this new system. But for those who don't remember, right now, any drafted player you can keep with 1 round earlier. And then if that player is kept on a consecutive contract, for every year that they're kept, you add another round to how much they inflate. So a 10th round draft pick, is eligible to be kept in the 9th, the next year, then the 7th, the following year, then the 4th, the year after that, and then the 4th year that player would go up 4 rounds to 0. They're ineligible to be kept. They're back in the draft pool. So a 10th round player, or 10th round draft pick would go 10, 9, 7, 4. You get 4 years max out of them. I think it's worked really well for us. I don't want to, I think it works well, but it also means that like every year there are a full round's worth of players. And this is a point I forgot to get to you with Nabil, but like, there's in the 7th round, like there were 12 guys in the 8th round that were drafted. So you can, in theory, fill the entire 7th round with keepers, right? And that adds to the stagnation of the draft pool. So what I'm suggesting is we look at changing how we inflate keepers to just every year cut the round in half, and that is how many. That's what round you need to pick that player in. So to go back to that 10th round draft pick, instead of going 9, 7, 4, and they're ineligible, a 10th round player would now go from 10 to 5 to 2, and then they'd be out of the draft pool. So it accelerates earlier, right? Like or actually go 10, 5, 2, 1, and then so you still have to, so the 10th round, like, and it's a little bit different for every round where a player is originally drafted. If you look at it, typically you're going to get the same number of years of drafting of having that player on your roster, but the acceleration of how much draft capital you give up is now front loaded instead of back loaded. And so that is the pitch of how. So this would be only for players drafted and the draft or the keeper value that they have going into the 2024 season. So this would not affect this year, because everyone that you kept in your roster last year, we had certain expectations about where they would be valued, next year, and that's not a fair change to make going into this year. But so very similar to when we first did keepers. Like, we have to go into the draft knowing that these players are keepers. So anyway, that's the idea. It would make things a lot simpler for me. Like, this is a side effect of just like it just cut the round in half. Like, you don't have to worry about how many years they were on a contract. Like, and just like the logistics of actually figuring this out become easier. But again, it front loads the inflation instead of backloading it, and like a 4th round pick, right? So like there are like 4th and 3rd round picks now like would be eligible. You have to do a 2nd round pick to keep them, but like by definition there's now there's 24 guys for those 12 picks. So like by definition, players are going to get back into the draft sooner. The big, like, the Kamaras and the Jordy Nelson from way back, like those, you can still get players for really good value and hold on to them for a long time, but it's going to increase the value of early round picks compared to late round picks. Kind of a byproduct of this means keepers and therefore also Rule 9 picks would have to be in the first 8 rounds, because a player in the 16th would go all the way to 8. So everything 9th and lower, like, you just like those are only draft picks. Those are not wouldn't be eligible for keepers. So I recognize that would change a lot of how the math works on trades. And I don't know that it's necessarily I think this would be better because it would increase the value of early round picks and decrease the value of late round picks. So right now, like, a 12th round pick is just as good as an 8th round pick, depending on how, or 6th round pick, depending on what your concept of value is. And I don't know if that's optimal. So anyway, I'll shut up now and let I know Nabil has thoughts, but James, I'd love to hear yours as well.
I'm split on it. I think part of me likes the current structure is you kind of have a rookie contract. Like, if you get someone that hits in the 12th, next year rocks also, you get a huge bang for your buck for kind of calling your shot. And then the next year, you still get really good value. And then that 3rd year, you're making a decision of all right, it was fun, but now they're a 2nd round, 1st round. I'm not going to keep Josh Jacob in the early first round. I think the flip side to it, with how we're talking about changing the total number of keepers, is I think it would pair pretty well with that. I think churning players more. Because I think when we first talked about this idea of 3 keepers versus 2 Rule 9, I was I feel most of the time people are going to opt towards, I'm going to keep 3 players that I know I'll get, versus risking trying to get 3 in Rule 9. But I think this would open up the window of someone being there's a lot of good players that aren't kept. Screw it, I'm going to keep my one really good 10th round or 8th round, 7th round keeper value and then like take 4 dart throws and roll 9. I think I would lean to trying to find a way where that second year you're still really getting, like the first time they're being kept, you're still getting deep value. I like speeding it up more so than it is. So someone's not on someone's team for like 5 years and it's like almost dynasty-esque. But I think it's fun when you like hit on a 13th, 12th round pick, knowing next year, like I mean, Antonio had like Justin Jefferson and that's awesome. Like he called a shot and like, then he gets a year or two of like great value. And like, I think that's what's kind of fun about having to make those decisions in late round of like depth versus like, I'm going to take this rookie or like this potential breakout. So I would, and it feels funny arguing this of being like, no, Chris, I want you to do more work. But some way where like maybe that next year it's 1 and then it goes into that cutting down. So you get some of that like huge value for calling your shot.
We're workshopping this, this is, and I already have an idea that just like from listening to you. But Nabil, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think James, don't feel bad because I think ultimately, if I'm going to talk about this topic, I'm going to take the emotions out of it. Chris, if you don't want to do more work, I will just do whatever makes your life easier as a commissioner. I think everyone in the league would agree to that. Now, pulling that emotion out, I would agree with James that I think we need to focus on what is great about being able to hit a late round keeper, right? It's draft someone in the 13th, you get them in the 12th, then you get them in the 10th. You just have this ability to say, look, I'm a good manager. I did my research, all my hard work in the offseason, like paid off. The person hit, and this is great. I was looking at like recently, it would appear not too many individual managers. I haven't looked at all the years past, but I'm trying to remember. Not many people have kept 11 plus keepers. It's not as frequent. I think maybe every team has like, maybe there's 1 or 2 or 3, but like those aren't, you're not getting too many Justin Jeffersons anymore, Alvin Kamara's anymore, or who was the original? Was it
Devonta Freeman?
Yeah, Devonta Freeman. It's not like that anymore. And I was just kind of, as you were mentioning it, I was looking at breaking down 4th round keeper, 6th round keeper, and 8th round keepers, and just kind of putting it more where we tend to hit our keepers at. And I didn't really think about it when we were initially talking about it, Chris, but like it is a front load versus a back load. And I feel like we should be rewarding managers on the back loading of it. Just like, because I'm looking at like you draft someone in the 4th, you keep per the rules that you're talking about, the proposal, it's 4-2-1 as opposed to 4-3-1. Yeah, I kind of like having that extra second round that next year, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't change much on the like it is a difference, but like
right. Okay, you jump to 6-5-3 as opposed to 6-3-1. Like I still kind of like having that second year be a little bit later. Like managers should be rewarded for getting that. Again, I'm going to take the emotion of it, make it more difficult for you, and agree with James that I'm fine with accelerating it faster because by the time you get past year 2, 3 round jumps are significant. Most of at least even starting at 8, you're like done getting value from that player after year 2 anyway. So like if we accelerate it more after getting some additional value from them, and maybe it's you don't lose a round the first time. So if you draft someone in the 12th, you get to keep them at 12 and then it halves. That way you at least get 1 additional year of value.
Well, so something I did, again, we're workshopping this. Like what if we cap the first year or not even cap first year, but like cap the total reduction at like either like 3 or 4 rounds. So like 12 would still like instead of going all the way to 6, like 12 only goes down, drops like 9 or 8, and then from there like it reduces by half. So like, that way, like the truly like deep picks don't become 8th round. Like, like your 15th rounder doesn't, instead of going to 14 in the current system, what I initially proposed, like 15 would go all the way to 7, like cap it at like, okay, your 15th round pick, like
goes to 11.
Goes like, it's you cut it in half, but maximum 4. So it actually only drops to 11. So that way, like you do like it doesn't completely accelerate the early, like the early value, right? And get rid of it, but then what this doesn't fix is it's like the mid round. Like you had like the 6th round example, like it's probably the most egregious, right? Of like how much of a change this would be, because it goes 6-5-3 out, or like 6-3-1 out. Like that's the bit, like it's probably like, and is that like this, I mean, this is discuss, like, it is some sort of cap on like the max amount of inflation, a way to kind of hybridize this. And then at that point it gets back to, the other side of it. It's like, well, if now there's enough manual work, or like, let's just keep, like, should we just keep the system the way it is? But all of this idea stems from that. James brought the point up, like it stems from the idea of like, let's get players, like let's get the player pool like back, like let's get the draft back, make the draft fun again. like let's get back to the point where your 7th round pick, like you're actually debating between guys that
some of you might start week 1 instead of
exactly.
like your 4th or 5th running back. Yeah. I like that. I think like my like just counter to that is like, I think that first year they're being kept is super crucial to them being a screaming value. And then from there, half it. I think it's just, maybe it's the greedy little piggy in me, but I'm like, I want to keep a starting running back in round 10. That's awesome. Like, I feel like I have like such a great like lotto ticket, because I like took a swing in last year's draft, but then like I don't get them for 3 years, like at that insane value. It's like, awesome. I get a huge benefit. Next year, are they still good? Like, all right, I get pretty dang good value still. And then like,
so
probably gone.
I like that. I like that idea that so the acceleration happens slow. Like it doesn't, basically, you draft somebody, they're kept at the same level. Then it like so you put a pause on the inflation, and then it becomes front loaded. I like that idea.
It's like their rookie contract is 1 season.
Yeah. The question then goes like, how do the impacts that I'm worried about are at the top of the draft. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but this means anyone you draft in the first round, like you get for 2 years.
I think you then have to do like the accelerate round. So right.
like a first round pick, like without an additional rule to what you proposed, right? A first round pick is a 2-year guarantee, because you get to keep them in the first round, right? Unless we like, and
I mean, I'm also not opposed to that.
And a second round pick is a guaranteed 3 years.
See, I think that's too complicated. I think like,
because it would be,
I think it accelerates 1 year yeah.
And then
I think you have to accelerate it the 1 year. So you get a value still for just 1 round earlier, and then you cut in half to just avoid the messiness of like your first round pick is a 2-year commitment. Your second round pick is this like 3-year commitment. Like that feels dynasty-esque again.
Right. And that it counters the whole point of this is like getting players back into the team.
All right.
Yeah.
Guys, let's get all nerdy here, okay? All right. I think James and I could probably get some sort of like, I think this should work. If you were to, because the whole idea is we're trying to make it easy, right? We just want you to have a formula that you just pretty much say,
Part
This
B.
is their keeper value. Let's move on, right? So I don't know if it's introducing a if in the sense that give people value if they get a double digit round. Like, how do we, it's too hard to determine like what is considered like that really great value, right? I think we would all love if you hit in the 13 higher, but I'm wondering if it is something in the equation to at least, do we at least, no matter what, first year inflate or just everyone goes down by one, right? So that way we get rid of the first rounds of being kept and you save the second years. The problem is when you're looking at this in the equation, I don't really fully understand what the best way to approach this would be, because then I don't want you to do extra work if I am going to bring the emotions into it, is then where do you have, right? Because you still have to track how many years these people have been kept. I mean, the most, I don't know if this makes it easier. The most that mathematically anyone could be kept is 5 years. And that's only pretty much once you're at the, I think when you're at 11, or no, when you're at 12 or 13 round keepers, if you do it in our normal inflation method. Otherwise, your rule, Chris, no matter what, caps at 4. I guess if you go higher than 14, if you keep a 15 and 16. Yeah. So it could just be like, we could also just lock in when you can have keepers. I know that when we talked about keepers before, I think we had kind of this convoluted way, right? It was like, if you got someone off waivers, they were automatically a 5th round. And then I don't know if we ever limited whether you could or could not keep first rounders or anything, but like we could just make these rules to help make this process simpler. Like, and then my last point in this is really what's the problem of keeping your first round, right? Like we actually see a lot more first round busts than we do anything else. So those people are still going to make it in. And like those who have higher values, we're losing first round picks. Let someone keep a first rounder if they want to keep it. Rule 9 gives people the ability to keep a first rounder. Why shouldn't a manager be able to?
Well, Rule 9, you can keep you can't keep anyone who was drafted in the first round the previous year.
Yeah, but I guess you could still take someone.
You use a first round pick to keep somebody that was a second round value the year before.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, even in like if you were to look at a redraft ranking, a lot of times you still can take a first round pick as your Rule 9, right? Like anyone who takes Kelsey or something, that's still technically a first rounder that is kept, even though they might have been a second round pick or whatever originally. You know what I mean? I'm taking these off. They're dirty, and I didn't get into formulas as much as I thought I would. But
yeah, well, yeah, no, because again, the point, like ease of use is ease of ability to manage all this is part B. Like I don't want to make a more convoluted system. Like the idea, but the idea, the crux of this is like, how do we figure out a way to like increase the availability of the top level players in the draft? So yeah, I think also I think part of the limiting the number of keepers and Rule 9 picks that's going to help, right? Like that's going to help a ton, because now already we're saying max 60 players are going to come in to the there's 198 draft picks I want to say across 16 rounds, max 60 of those slots are going to be taken up, where in years past it's been I want to say I don't know what the exact number is, but it's more than that or at least the total eligible it's been more than that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm also okay with having slightly different rules depending on what round we're if there's a round cutoff where we say okay, at 6, then higher than 6 we do the cut in half, and look as long as it's something that is easily digestible. I don't want it can be Like the rule doesn't have to be like it's just this one thing, and like what like like we can like the first year we did keepers, Nabil, we put in the rule like, hey, for year one, we'll let you keep your first round pick with the first so that way the first round like is something like we're able to keep. Like we've had rules like that, but like, hey, like for this specific scenario, like even last year, I don't know if you guys remember, but like because we reduced the roster by one, I got rid of everybody's last pick, which technically meant like there were only 10 picks in round 16, and then there was a 2-pick round 17. Like I don't mind it being like weird like that, like one-off type things. I want a rule to make sense. That that's the other thing is like it's not difficult to explain the like our rule, like I like our current keeper rule, but it does take time to explain it. And it'd be easier if it was just it was like, yeah, like cut the round in half, like and it makes it easier. Like I get questions, not from you guys, because you guys know, but like how to look stuff up on like my spreadsheets and whatever. But like guys ask me every year, like, wait, what round can I keep this guy in? And it's like I understand like that it is complicated and convoluted, like, and I'm trying to reduce some of that with this proposal.
Yeah, I think I get that. And I think ultimately, I think it could be interesting enough just to postpone making this necessarily for the 2024 draft, right? Because the idea is that this won't get implemented until 2025. So we're talking even more in the future.
This was
like we would not be drafting this year with the understanding, because our teams are not currently even set up that way. I'm going to keep saying this. Sometimes I do think, and it feels like this for the last couple of years, like we got to make a change. I would love to just kind of like, I do get that some of this is easy in your work, and that's why it's even a bigger deal. But like, I would like to just kind of like ride out a season with like not too many changes, right? Not changes in roster size, changes in the keeper. Like I love if we left, not necessarily this conversation, but going into next year with like, hey, 5 max players. Like that is, I think, is a good, not drastic change to some of the other changes that we've made. Ride that out and then continue with the inflation. But I'm not like opposed to the halving. But like James said earlier, I just want 1 year to feel like the value of my pick.
That's completely reasonable. Yeah, and also like because this is not a change, like there's. This is something like I wanted to like hopefully people take a listen to this and like as a primer for like let's chat about it in Austin. Like what do we got? Like if the sentiment is like no, leave it the same, like guess what, we'll leave it the same. Like but if the sentiment is like this could be a helpful way to increase the player pool, then like let's look at making that change. But and to your point, to be like the 5 max keeper rule 9, like I think is already gonna is going to challenge that. So like I don't need this rule change to happen immediately. I just think it's a way to help, and it is it's a long-term kind of like almost like thought experiment of like, well, like if we change this, like how would that would that change the league for the better? And I think it makes too many long-term changes to how the league operates. That like I'm not gonna just like make this change going into the season, like that'd be ridiculous. But I do think capping keepers and rule 9 picks is something that just like we can all agree on. Like we all have the same access to those players for the most part. Like I think that's a fair a more fair immediate change that hopefully and maybe we go a couple of years of just like having this change, we realize like actually like we don't need to make anything else, and like because that is the goal, is to find a set of rules that we play by that like we don't like that then we ride those same rules for 30 years like and the league runs itself. But so yeah.
James,
don't take any submarines rides, Chris. We need you. Stick around. The health of this league needs to last that 30 years.
And we've been canceled.
Vehicle?
Great.
Submersible vehicle.
Dude. The thing was made out of carbon fiber?
Yeah, when I heard the materials, I just kind of person that laughed, but just to kind of go, he went under the submarine, James. What happened? He's gone. The pressure has killed him. I don't know how you feel about in this kind of sentiment, but like, I don't think we've seen the long-term effects of other changes in the league.
Yeah.
I think my only concern, and I already talked about this with Chris offline a little bit, right, is with the complete change in value of front end to back end, or sorry, I guess from back end to front end values, we're like changing trading again. And I think so many people, and I think we've talked about this even during the season, we're still trying to grasp what the true value is of having an early draft pick versus having a later keeper, and how one player is worth a first and a third and another is worth a fifth and a seventh, right? So it's like, I don't want to keep changes because I think any of you watch Formula One? Okay, who cares?
No,
For those who don't, like, Red Bull understood the new regulations better than anyone else, and that's why they are just completely demolishing the entire group. Like right now, certain individuals in our league might have a better understanding of where values are. I don't even know who those individuals are. Let's give people time to catch up before making more changes where it's like, okay, a certain few know how to exploit that rule. And so, because the only other thing that we've talked about this before, and why I'm like, don't necessarily want to go and change how the inflation rule works too much yet, is also how much we've talked about potentially changing how the draft and draft order looks, right? So like, I don't want to go and keep every season keep tweaking things where I lose value, understanding of value of one, and then here comes in potentially changing the beginning of the draft. And now I'm just like, well, okay, yes, we're all going to be on the same page in that, but like, I think like riding certain seasons out every once in a while is also fine, because I think our first couple of years, we didn't have that many big changes. And then only in the last 5 years, we've had significant changes if you look at it kind of in those like microclimates.
Yeah. I think if you let's do the thought experiment of my initial rule change, like goes through, like, how does that change trade values? Like how does that change the value of draft picks in your mind?
I mean, right off the bat, I'm less likely to want to trade any early picks because those are potentially my keeper picks based on the way that the halves look.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it.
So my thought is like it devalues later round picks, which inherently increases the value of early round picks. And that's not said with no judgment. Like, but that's what it would do, right? Like trading away a third round pick, like that pick is very, very valuable in this system. Like where a third round pick is still very valuable currently, but it increases this would increase the value of like the first 4 rounds by a lot, and decreases everything from like 9 to 16 by a lot. Right, it would, like, and this is said without judgment. Like this is like, yeah. But like that's like it would, right? Like it would, like if you knew that there, you're only going to have 5, pick like it. So without any of the adjustments we've made, right? If it's a pure like just cut the round in half, that means you'd have 5 potential keepers and Rule 9 picks that you could make in the first 8 rounds, which means like if you want to have like a maximum of 5 players going into next year, like you can only trade away 3 picks in the top 8. Mm-hmm. Like that is like that's just how the math works out. Is that good? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's hard. So like, let's say I'm in that middle group going into the playoffs, kind of like how I was, right? And so I don't know. And yeah, sorry, I'm not also trying to make it about my story to victory.
No, but like
this is where this is exactly where it comes in.
Yeah.
James, what 2 trades did I make that gave away a lot of my picks? It was for Christian McCaffrey and Michael Williams. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it was Mike Williams and then it was Christian McCaffrey. I don't know why I went Michael Williams.
It's very proper.
In general, I don't even think I would have ever considered making that Christian McCaffrey trade because I'm looking at just who my keepers are now. Like having had Mike Williams on my roster, he would have been a 3rd round pick. Jamar would have been a 1st round pick. You know, if I was considering Kareem Hunt, that would have been a 2nd round. Like I no longer feel that it's worth trying to sell to win a league. And that's the value of having backloading, is because now I understand that, like, dude, I can sell my early picks because I want to win the championship this year. But if I'm on the cusp, I'm not incentivized to try to get rid of my early round picks because I can't even keep anyone. Because when I do all my examples of, 4th round keeper, 6th round, 8th round, or even 14th round, my 1st, 3rd, and 2nd are all just like they're gonna be for keepers. And then I lose any trade value that I want to have to try to make a playoff push. So it's just gonna, I personally think it's gonna impact how people trade and try to win the league. Maybe that gets rid of some of the tanking, but like in the end, it doesn't help the 8th place through 4th place players because they're not, under their own discretion, they can take the chance, but it does impact those players the most every season. Steps off soapbox.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point. And I think it just kind of ties back into like, we need to let it sit for a while to like still kind of calibrate with like the new amount of keepers. And like, if we're implementing this like 5 total rule, because I think like we're all starting to get on the same page of like, what is the value of a keeper in a pick in a future year. So yeah, maybe it's, and I know we're still talking about pretty far off in the future, but we implemented the division rule just a few years ago, and hey, I haven't got to participate in the playoff yet while divisions are a thing. So it takes time for rules to like, for us to like kind of calibrate.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this before, but like I've had enough people ask me to get like, if we can get rid of divisions.
Just kidding.
Right? Like no, like I am happy with that we experimented with it, and I don't think like ultimately it didn't really change too much of like, it didn't change in the end. It didn't change who made playoffs, which is great. But the fact that like it didn't add anything to the league except like anxiety about like, is like, are the divisions even really worth it? And Yahoo doesn't understand that maybe divisional matchups should be prioritized when you randomize the schedule. So it added, more like, so now like so we're getting rid of divisions, and now I will press the randomized schedule button. Like I will say, James, like, give me a number between 1 and 10, or maybe, and like I will randomize the schedule that many times. And then like, that's it. Like we're rolling with it. There's I don't have to worry about anything divisions wise. So hopefully that gets back to a traditional Splatty, hey, top 6 make it, bottom 6 you're out. And there will still be like convoluted things. We have to root for certain people to win, to beat the guy that you're chasing. But like, you have to look at the schedule instead of look at the division alignment to know who that's going to be. That's all. I feel like this is a good, like, this is a primer for this rule change. I've had other ideas that I'm not proposing that we do, as far as like the first round or 2 draft order. Like I'm not gonna tell you what my thoughts are on that, because we're not changing anything else going into this year. The big changes are we are capping Rule 9 and keepers to a total of 5 players coming to the draft, and divisions are no more. That's it. Those are the big changes for this season.
Let's make conferences. How about conferences instead of divisions?
2 conferences of 6. The only problem is that it's how do you have an even schedule? Because with the extra week of the NFL, right? Like we basically have a 14-game regular season. So you're going to play 11 guys once, and you're going to play, or you play all 11 guys once, and then you have an extra 3 matchups. So,
yeah. I was a big fan of divisions, but again, I don't have a hard enough opinion to push back, other than that I do like the last 3 being divisions, but because Yahoo sucks, I can't just, well, there goes a potential sponsor. But like, if they could probably have figured it out, it wouldn't have been that big of an issue. And probably, like, I think most of it was because it looked or appeared as one division was going to pretty much take over playoff spots, or it just, right? Like there was,
it looked like a bad team. Someone was going to get in when they shouldn't have, which is like, the drama.
But it didn't happen, and we're all good. And so it's like, in the end, I just feel like it could have been good if we played it out and if Yahoo made it easier, but it's really not that big of a deal. Let's go back to old fantasy football, where people are going to start complaining about who they have to play twice because they happen to play, ranked team 1, 2, 3 at the end and lose their chance at playoffs. So I can't wait till those happen, because, coming right back in with division talk.
Well, that's part of like, I hope you guys, the key of like, okay, why do I want to get like the player pool to be normalized, right? So like, I don't want teams to be awful. If we have 12 competitive teams, that's a better league than having a couple of super teams and a couple of people who are just shipping it to next season. Like it is better if there are 12 competitive teams. And right now, like there's not, like, if you have a bad team, like the incentive is like, all right, well, like there's no reason to try to win, like, because I can get a lot of draft capital. Like, so part of the like the reason behind the reason for wanting to have the players back in the player pool is, I think it would reduce the number of trades that are made, right? It will reduce the number of and because now every year a first round pick is traded. Like I think a first round pick, I have it up right now.
Yeah, James.
First round pick has been traded for every season for the last 3 years, and like that should be a big deal when a first round pick actually goes, instead of it being like, oh, who's the like. And there were 2 of them that were traded 2 years ago.
I think we're still going to have that. I don't think that's going to change. It's a desperation trade to win the league.
Yes. But you're going to force. In fact, actually last year was pretty light as far as first and second. If you look at first and second rounds, picks that were traded, like in 2021, 3 second rounds and a first round were traded. In 22, 3 second rounds and 2 first rounds were traded, and last year only 1 each of a first and a second were traded. So it's not like it's gotten lighter, like, because I think that us as managers have realized how valuable those picks really are. If you make them even more valuable, then it's going to be a big deal when someone actually does make a trade for that one. And if people aren't giving up their first and second round picks every year, and there's more players in the pool, like all 12 teams are going to be more competitive. That's an assumption. I'll admit that, but like, and then it doesn't matter who your extra games are against, like, because you're going to play, somebody competitive every week in theory. So yeah, I don't know. It's fun. It's like, look, I enjoy having this league to be like a little like sandbox. So, we can tinker. And ultimately I think what this league is great at is it makes us all better at fantasy football, and like, go win other leagues. Like, I love, like, every year, I love here. Like, I think I ask every year in a group chat, like, all right, it's championship week. Like, who's in one, like, because obviously, like, there's 2 of us in the championship of Splatty every year, but like, it's fun to hear, like, oh yeah, like most of us are fighting for a championship somewhere because, this league makes us think a lot about how we're building our fantasy football rosters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not much more to say.
I was like, oh, I wonder what James has got. Let's go. Your turn. Step on the soapbox, James. He's like,
I think we should go 4 kickers per team. Every NFL active kicker should have to be started on a roster. So I live and die by the kickers.
I have another. This isn't even a rule change, another proposal. So before I jumped on here, so I did have to leave. Autumn's going to work. I had to say goodbye to Autumn. She asked me, why are we doing a fantasy football podcast when it's summer? She's like, isn't football in like the fall? I was like, yeah, it is, but like, like it's fantasy football, and so I was like, yeah,
you had to have the talk. All of us guys have to have the talk.
Yeah, I had to explain, like, oh, I got to put my spreadsheet together for the players who are eligible to be kept from one year to the next. And I was so back up. So I told her, yes, that we're filming a podcast for football. She's like, isn't football?
I feel so bad for her for the conversation you're about to have, what you had with her.
She just said, I'm confused. And I was like, well, it's because of like we got prepared for the fantasy season, and then I kind of explained to her, I was like, we are allowed to keep players like from one year to the next. So like, there's a certain amount of, I was like, very high levels. Like, so, you just have to figure out like what round you're allowed to keep them in.
Fast forward to 20 minutes later, you have like charts on the wall, and you're like, so a 13th round keeper is super valuable, but under the new proposal.
I just go like, I explained to her a little bit. I was like, are you still confused? And then she said, don't ask me that. So Jose doesn't know. She's not confused, but I think she's just annoyed. But I think it is time that we start a supplemental wives and girlfriends league. And maybe I think here's my pitch. We have wives and girlfriends of Splatty do a best ball draft. So like they don't have to worry about making, no making trades. You just you pick your team, you don't have to set your lineup, like very, very minimum bar. If the fine, ladies of Splatty League, like significant others, however you want it, the wives and girlfriends, the wags, if they want to go more complicated and have a full-on league, be my guest. But I think we should take the Matthew Berry approach, try to get somebody every year into fantasy football. And I think having a wives and girlfriends league would be, one, hilarious, but two, really fun, a really fun way to get some people involved who I'm sure we all annoy and frustrate with our with our propensity to just stare at a TV screen all day on Sundays from September to January.
I think we secretly
12 separate conversations of being like, but why? Why do I have to do this? And be like, no. My friends would really like it.
I think they have to compete for a compensatory last round pick. They get Mr. Inevitable, or not inevitable, irrelevant. What's funny about that? I was actually saying, honestly, I was going to suggest it this time, but my communication with the group and us kind of solidifying Austin here, just think everyone's getting more busier in their lives, right? So there's less off-season communication on our group chat, but I don't see why we couldn't invite significant others to the drafts. There should be no reason, right? Especially since we have little Batman Chalupa or Chalupa Batman, Tiffany and Antonio can finally make the draft, and just make it that way. It's because in the end, we also are, especially the more that we are actually doing destinations and not just California kind of things, is this is a vacation. People are using some of their time, right? So we are taking away from the possibility of being closer to family and friends. I know, Kayla would love to participate and hang around the house, not obviously sit and do the draft, but the house has a pool. So, we can get larger places in all these cities that it is more of like a family friendly, and like I also would love if we could eventually ever have a draft where maybe more than half the league is actually in attendance. I think Chicago is probably our best attendance in a long time.
It was, yeah.
Right?
Well,
We had 8 people there, right?
Oh, yeah. Like,
right. COVID didn't help, but in reality, we've been a league for 10 years. So we could have had more even while we were in California. But I think with families and introducing the location, so like, you know, wherever the draft is next year, I would love for that to be able to have, you know, Devin come out, James finally make his way onto a plane to come out. I don't even know. Everyone else is in California, but then there's me and Hoyt. So I know Hoyt's fiance would roll her eyes at coming to a fantasy football event, but that's the point. We invite you to let you into our worlds. And otherwise, like, go wine tasting, go get a beer. Like, we're just gonna sit here looking at a sheet talking shit. Wait on Travis for 40 minutes.
I think having the WAGs League contribute to the draft decathlon would also be a really fun wrinkle. Like, you know, like just throwing that. But yeah, I think part of this is inspired by, you know, when we were at
Can I just pause 1 second because I want to not lose this thought? I think that could be great in like 4 years, Nabil losing to Antonio's son in a foot race to cost him the draft order.
I'd love it. But yeah, some of this is inspired by, like, you know, we had our draft last year at the restaurant, and like downstairs was another draft, and those guys were probably like on average like 8 to 10 years older than us, and like they all have families there, and like that is where, like, if that's not the future of where we're going, then like we have no future, right? Like, we're all getting older, getting married, having kids. It's starting to happen. Like, if we don't start to make it more inclusive, like, then our draft weekend is going to go away. And so I think having something like that, like a league for wives and girlfriends, and like, if you don't have one, you don't, like, you know, if it's only a 10 person league, like, fine. If it's an 8-person league, fine. Like, you know, get your mom or your sister to join if you really want. But I think it'd be I think it'd be a fun way to add some just more family wholesomeness into Splatty.
It'll never be wholesome. I think with that, we can rope this into Kevin Abon. You're on the clock of finishing this decathlon and understanding our draft order. And maybe wrap this conversation that was not expecting to be nearly an hour to come out of the gates. But it's always good to talk to both of you all. We'll have more football news as we probably we will as we get into July. Getting some training camp, getting some rumors, getting all those, the hype trains going, the fingers a waggling. Let's try to get some more pods done here. Let's dive into some people's teams and future picks back to our normal programming.
I would say expect the draft order to happen after 4th of July, but like not too long after that. Like by mid-July, we should have that solid. That's just based on what I've talked to Kevin about. Like he's still wrapping up a couple things, but it's coming. You know, and you can look at the decathlon. Devin seems to be running away with the top pick, but you know, there is a lottery at the end, so anything can happen. But yeah, that's the, stay tuned. But hopefully, what are we at, the 24th? And
it's the 24th. Yeah, we got like 2-3 weeks.
I would say within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have draft order, and that'll be a pod for sure.
Oh yeah. Let's get ready for it.
Can we do it live on the pod?
We could. Okay, yeah, we could. Yeah, like do the draft lottery.
The draw, yeah.
Our first guest since James, who's now a host.
Hey, we might have 9 new hosts.
Well, that's kind of, it's like, well, our podcast is basically just it's just a Zoom call. Like,
I mean, what is a podcast but just a recording of a conversation? So
it's just all it.
Whoa.
Yeah, like I saw a post on Instagram. I think it was like, do men realize that they can just like have a conversation with their buddies and not record it? Like they can just like talk about their feelings without it being a podcast. Like I was like, excuse me.
No, it needs to be brought to you by Simply Safe.
Well, on that note, thank you all for finding time. I feel like the best part of this pod is the last 5 minutes here. So hopefully people make it this far. All right. Well, that's it for me. Peace out, guys. Peace out. Bye.